Hey, we're back. Do not mind the high top fade. I might have to put a sponge on it, but anyways, this video is going to be on, I guess, how do I overcome despair? Now, with the wording that I'm using, a lot of y'all might be able to pick up on the topic that we're going to be talking about, and that is related to Kierkegaard as well. So, with overcoming despair, if we're going to describe it by how Kierkegaard describes it, we're constantly in a state of despair. And it has a lot to do with how we relate to the self, to ourselves. So, firstly, a lot of people are in a state of despair when they realize that they have a self, that they have to experience having a self, and they don't necessarily know what that means. They're thrust with this thing called a self, and there's not really any other object, any other authority that tells the person what that necessarily means. Then you move on to a state of despair where the person tries to get out of this uncertainty by relating to things outside of themselves. So maybe they might not know who they are, but they realize, well, I'm really good at swimming, so I might be a swimmer. Or I'm really good at playing the drums, so I might be a drummer. So they're still in a state of despair. There's still a lot of uncertainty and dread, but they have some sense of security in the role that they're adopting. However, you reach another stage of despair when you come into realization that all of these things are projections from, again, the self that exists within you, the self that existed within the first stage of despair. And once you reach the third stage, you come across an experience where you realize that you can't really escape yourself. You can't really escape yourself. You try to escape yourself with saying that you're this, you're that, you can do this, you can do that, but you realize that all of those things are merely going back to you, right? I am a really good swimmer. I am really good at playing the drums. I am a really good father. I am a really good son. All of these things come from I, and you can't really escape it. So, of course, Kierkegaard, being the Christian that he is, he says that the only way to escape this is through faith. And the faith that he posits is faith in an absolute, faith in something that cannot really fail you, right? And of course, when it comes to sort of a mental picture of what this is, Kierkegaard uses Abraham, right? Abraham, what does he do? He sacrifices his son Isaac, right? And he uses this as sort of his, evidence that he believes in the authority of God. And this is not like, Agamemnon's sacrifice, where, he sacrifices in accordance with a universal, in accordance with something logical, in accordance with something reasonable. Abraham does the sacrifice in something that is absolute, but on the grounds of something that is personal, right? It's coming from something that is, within him, that's within his own inclination. If Agamemnon described his sacrifice to another Greek, they wouldn't question it or whatever. They would just be like, okay, that makes sense. For the good of the state. Yeah, that makes sense. But if you do a sacrifice and you tell somebody, yeah, I'm sacrificing, my son because a voice in my head that calls itself God told me to do it, you sound crazy. But you have to stand on those principles. If that's what you're called to do, you have to have faith that that's what you're supposed to be doing. So faith is very important for Kierkegaard. And reading him and looking at my own life, I do agree that faith is very important, and faith to an absolute is very important. Not in a sense to where this thing has to be a God, that this has to be a deity, but faith to something in your life that you view as eternal is I guess you can say, I think it's of importance. And, whatever you find that you relate to, it can't be a universal. It can't be like how I was saying, I'm a really good swimmer, I'm a really good that. It has to be something that is a lot more, it has to be something that, can't really be explained away. Almost in a sense to where it has to be unexplainable. Something kind of like the Tao within Taoism, something like the Way. It has to be something that you feel just pushes you in certain ways, pushes your very being in certain ways. With me, it's the will. Like, I feel like that there is a certain will, absolute will, that forces me to do things, and I trust the things that it forces me to do. Now, as an agnostic, I don't put definitions on this will. I don't say that this will has a consciousness. I don't say that this will is an energy or some form of equation or whatever. I don't say anything. I don't describe words in accordance to what this will actually is. Reading a whole lot of scriptures and texts from different religions, it's sort of, warned me of trying to use a language to describe this thing. The closest thing that I can do to describing this will is by using something in accordance with the via negativa, which is of course negations. So, I'm not really, using positive attributes when it comes to this will. All I know is that I just know that it exists, and I know that it guides my life. And what this has also done for me is it's also eliminated the loneliness and the isolation that I feel existentially, in my life, and I'm saying this to say, I'm saying this in the sense of how I'm overcoming it. I'm not saying that, it's dead or whatever. I'm most likely going to have more dark nights of the soul, but I feel like when it comes to life, this is how my life actually is. And again, this is faith. This is not something that, a lot of other people might agree with. This is not something that a lot of other people might say is actually what occurs within my own life, but I have a faith that this is what is occurring. If y'all, remembered my old videos that I had on this channel, I told y'all, bro, I really do believe in a deterministic universe. If y'all remember, that's what I based my whole name of my channel on, being an automaton. But still, that's my answer. That's my solution. And I think that's really a problem that a lot of modern people are facing. A lot of modern people are stuck on that third stage. And a lot of psychology makes it to where, you can only operate on that third stage. There's not really a faith element to psychology, which I'm not knocking psychology for not having a faith element, because at the end of the day, it's a discipline based around research, theory, and practice. So there has to be, tried and true methodologies for, the self and for the psyche. So I'm not knocking there being a lack of faith, but there are irrational elements within human life, with human understanding, that research, theory, and practice can't really pin down, and psychology can't really get there. Psychology tried to get there with Jung and synchronicities, where, Jung is pretty much saying that, like, hey, there's things that happen that are meaningful to other people, and these meaningful things that happen come from an external. They don't come from the self. They come from an external. They come from an object that has nothing to do with the self, but that's meaningful to the self. Jung probably got the closest to going about trying to put psychology into that direction, right? That's probably the only person that I can say. But moving on to the issue, right? You're in this third stage where you realize, you're yourself, and all that you ever will be is yourself. And, it would be cool if a lot of people could have like a Luciferian attitude or have a Sisyphean attitude to this realization and revolt and take on the responsibility of that frame of mind and that despair. It would be cool, but we've never really been taught that. All we've really been taught is that we've just been taught that we can't really do anything about determinism. Things happen. And we've also been taught on a religious front that the only thing that can save us is something outside of ourselves. And again, when I'm talking about my absolute, I'm talking about the absolute that I see is one that allows for me to have responsibility and have a trust in the choices that I make. I'm not describing my absolute that I have faith in as something that I hold as a crux. But in the West, whenever we look at an absolute, it's always a crux. Like God's gonna do this for me, God's going to fix this for me. We don't really look at it as God has a mission for me and I have to accomplish it, and I have a responsibility to accomplish it on my own means. So man now, and when I say man, I'm mostly really talking about my generation, is alone because of the fact that we've gone through the first stage of realizing that we have a self. We've gone through the second stage of realizing that our self can't really be easily described by the things that we do. And then we come back to the realization of, okay, I'm back to square one. Now how do I get out of this predicament of, the isolation that all I am is all I am. All I am is just this, all I am is just this person, and I can never be anything but this person, right? Because, like I said, for some this can work, but for others they might interpret this as all I am is this person, so there's no such thing as possibilities. There's no such thing as the impossible occurring. All that can occur is what is possible with the self that is manifest. There's no, extraordinary circumstances that can occur with me having a self. That's how a lot of people see this third stage of despair. They see this third stage of despair as, there's always going to be a mundaneness to my individual experience. There's always going to be nothing there. I'm always going to be isolated. Everything that I do is always going to have an uncertainty to it. Everybody that I see, every emotion that I have, isn't trustworthy. It's merely a projection. If I love this person, it's just an animal projection. I don't love this person. If I hate this person, I don't hate this person because of a legitimate reason for hating them. It's a freaking shadow projection. It's a shadow projection coming from myself. All that I can trust is myself, and there's no external that I can truly trust, right? So we're kind of getting into like a solipsism, like a solipsistic sense of despair, sort of, not completely, but I'm just trying to paint y'all a picture here. But when I got out of that mind, I think it really just has to do with acquiring a form of irony in life again. Like there, it's just life is cause and effect, and I'm a part of that cause and effect, like I said. So there's things in life that I'm not going to be able to control, but there's things in life that I might see that I'm also the a significant variable in being a part of. So when I look at life like that, I realize that it is what it is, but that it is what it is makes it to where I still thoroughly want to enjoy my life, even though with the forces that are in play with creation, I don't really have to take it too serious. Kind of like how with meta-modernity, it's like, meta-modernity is an attempt to have, like all these creative paradoxes, and it's an attempt to have a sense of irony, but have a sense of seriousness too. So, you know, with the sense of irony, that can sort of come about with powerlessness, but the sense of seriousness can also come about with, even though there is a sense of powerlessness, you still, for some odd reason, attempt to have responsibility as well. So, I don't know. I think that, trying to come up with these existential um, solutions, coming up with existential solutions like this, I think that, it can be a bit perplexing. But in the age that we're in now, I think a lot of us are going to have to undergo that project. And we're also going to have to undergo, trying to give language to it and be able to do it. But anyways, you guys, I just wanted to make a confusing video on how I overcome despair. And yeah, peace.